I can have the most expensive and best security tool in the world, but at the end of the day, if you can call my help desk and socially fish my help desk to give you their credentials, there's no tooling that's going to fix that. Technology is still going to be there, but the weakest link in the chain is going to be the human element. So every day, it's my own employees that keep me awake at night.
Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber to better understand their audience and turn them into loyal customers. Every week, Danny Wolf has brutally honest conversations with busy tech buyers about what really motivates them, the things they hate that vendors do, and what you can do about it. Get access to practical information on how to build authentic relationships with your audience. Listen to and talk with your buyers, and apply real customer insights to your strategies and tactics. You owe it to the world to unmute your mic. Are you ready?
So, Chris, why don't you tell me who you are? What do you do? And why the hell do you do it?
Well, I'm Chris Elliot. I'm currently Director of Security Operations at SoFi, a fintech company, well known mostly because we're a sponsor of a stadium that just hosted the last Super Bowl. But most people ask me if I work at the stadium, which I kind of wish I did because I'm a sports fan. But no, I work for the company themselves, Director of Cybersecurity. Before that, I did about 8 years at the Walt Disney Company in numerous security and compliance roles. And before that, I spent 23 years in the U.S. Army as a communications specialist, a variety of assignments, from special operations to NATO to the NSA, a ton of different places. Um, Got into security while I was in the Army. I started off, to date myself, as a teletype repairman, which was, way pre-computer, if you would, and finished my career as the network engineering chief of the Network of the Pacific, encompassing the entire military network between California and Korea. Obviously, working in that area, cybersecurity is a highlight. I mean, we're working in your daily threat actors, whether it's North Korea, China, or just opportunity threats. When you're trying to protect that type of area, if you're even touching the network, you're definitely a security professional, and if you're managing it, I mean, every day. So that's where I got from here to there. My security background is extensive. I'm a jack of all trades. I could talk to you about satellites. I could talk to you about radio. I could talk to you about Cat 5. I've had to do it all. And managing every day is a new thing, but I feel I'm pretty comfortable. I've seen a lot of things in my time.
So, as the director of security operations at SoFi, what
Mhm.
is your one bleeding neck challenge right now?
My people. I can have the most expensive and best security tool in the world, but at the end of the day, if you can call my help desk and socially fish my help desk to give you their credentials, there's no tooling that's going to fix that. So it's constantly speaking to our folks, educating them, coaching them through situations, advising them, and basically watching out for our people. So, technology is still going to be there, but the weakest link in the chain is going to be the human element. So every day, it's my own employees that keep me awake at night.
What's your ultimate goal at the end of the day? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, that's great. I tell people that are looking for to get into cybersecurity about, do you feel a sense of accomplishment or sense of completion? For me, every day I'm trying to make our networks more secure, safer. I'm trying to be a little more proactive. Um, every day I'm trying to find that threat a minute, a second faster than we would have yesterday. So it's building new detects. It's finding out how to be more proactive in our security posture, how to look at intel and anticipate what's coming in, and definitely how can we better our own tools to reduce alert fatigue. We have a list that our SOC is small, but a large amount of alerts. So every time I build something new or ask my team, we have to think about the impact to our team. So how do we reduce alert fatigue, reduce noise, and get to the crux of the problem?
Hmm. So, let me. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Doors closed.
Uh,
I was hearing some background noise and I didn't
all right.
know what. Um, so I want to dig in a little bit on alert fatigue because that's
Hmm.
something that I know as an intelligence vendor. I know that is a definite
Hmm.
problem. Take me back to the day where you finally said, I need to solve this challenge of alert fatigue and reach your ultimate goal?
One day I logged into our alert console and I saw, roughly about 300 alerts sitting there unreviewed. And as a manager, oh, this is horrible. Why is my team not getting to it? Then I took the time to look at what they had reviewed that day, and this is about mid lunch time period. They had gone through 600, and I realized that this was just a tidal wave they were never going to overcome. It was like what I like to use analogy: digging a hole on the beach, right? Every time you scoop out sand, two more, more sand comes in. They're never get to the bottom of it. And so then I started clicking down in the alerts, and realizing there were a ton of false positives, a ton of BAU, business as usual type of alerts. And then I had to think about like, how do they sort through all this to find that one nugget of information? And then immediately post discovering that, I went back and looked through our post-mortem logs, and turns out we had a large amount of incidents that we had detected, our alerts had detected far earlier than we detected, because all these alerts were being lost in the noise. We weren't getting to the crux of it. And so then I really concentrated not so much on building more alerting, but building better alerting. What is the alert? So I came up with what said I was comfortable with, which is about 80% ratio. I'll accept 20% noise, because you're never going to get 100%. If you get something that's creating no noise, you probably didn't create the right alert. So 80-20 ratio is what I really came to for alert fatigue. And when I started talking to the team about alert fatigue, they realized, they said, yeah, this is a problem. We just never thought they had a feeling that all alerts are good alerts, and that's not true.
You have the 80-20 split. What do you do next about to solve that problem?
Well, what you want to do next is really look at your cyclic alerts, or things that look alike. That if you can see it 3 times in a row, you should automate it. So if you have an alert that's firing, and even if it's a known good alert, but it's firing, and it's firing the same way 3 times in a row. For instance, for my organization, we suffer through credential stuffing and um, all the time. So then how do we automate that, pick up that alert? And if you have the same alert firing 3 or more times, you probably have the same response 3 more times. So now you should automate that response. And get down to it where you're applying human effort on problems that only humans can solve. That's really what you want to do, is anything that's cyclic, repeatable, automate it. Get it out of your way, or at least get it to the end list with the most amount of information possible to make the decision. Because I would watch my SOC operators, and they'd get an alert and they would open 4 or 5 different screens up and pull in intel and information from 6 different sites to make the decision whether or not this was a good or bad effort. And that was amazing. But I said, what if I could just present all 6 of those screens to you at once, so that when it came to the decision matrix, you had it in front of you? And I used that as a 3 in the morning check. If I woke you up in dead sleep at 3 in the morning, presented with the screen, could you make the decision you needed to make? And it really sped up our decision making process, our intel process. It sped up a lot of things. And we started to see less false positives and quicker response times.
How do you go about researching those products to help your team out? And what even more, how do you go about, separating the wheat from the chaff among vendors and solutions?
Well, I guess I should just say I use the quadrant and the quadrant only, and it tells me everything I need to know about the world. But obviously, I don't know. I don't know who that quadrant's aimed towards. But no. Um, when I look at the security tooling coming out, no vendor is going to tell me their tool sucks. Every vendor is going to tell me their tool's the best in the breed. Every vendor is going to tell me their tool's adaptable. But what I really start to look at is, I start to look at, how does it apply to my business? Does it have integrations? I've worked with some great DevSecOps people that could integrate anything, but there was so much customizable work that when I bring a tool into my in-house, I have to have it integrate natively with all my tools. So those APIs have to be built. Those things have to be built. So can I bring your tool into my environment? And then, is your tool adaptable to my environment? It needs to be almost object oriented. I need to choose any ticketing system. I need to choose any EDR platform. I need to choose any threat intel feed. I need to plug in. So I need to be adaptable. So I'm looking at adaptability. And then, to be dead honest, at this point, I'm also looking at, how long have you been in the market? You might be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you've only been in the market for a month or two, are you sustainable? Do you have an actual support plan? Are you able to assist me? Do you have a ticketing issue? Um, Early in my military career, I encountered inflatable beach ball satellite antennas, and they were amazing because everything weighs something. So our satellite dishes weighed 600 pounds. This beach ball weighed 50. It was amazing. It was a it is game changer. The only problem is the guy was making them in his garage. So we couldn't buy it because we just didn't know if he'd be there the next day. Thankfully, I can tell you those beach ball antennas are now standard operating, released in the Army, and special operations years later. But at the point, it was the greatest thing I could ever think of, but we weren't sure if they were supportable and viable. So I'm really looking at viability. And then probably what I'm not going to say the most, but really is the street cred. I'm going to talk to my peers. I'm going to say, have you heard of Tool X? Have you used Tool X? What do you think about Tool X? Um, and so I'll ask people. I don't need them to give me where do you think your tool is used? Can I speak to a customer or do I know somebody? I had one tool vendor that dropped somebody, and I said, oh, I know the director of infrastructure there. Hold on, and I called him, and what his experience was not what the vendor was telling me. So that was reality, and at the end of the day, honesty. Um, I want you to tell me where your tool doesn't perform best. I guarantee you, if your tool is 10 out of 10 in every category I need, I can't afford it. Um, so what I want to know is where are the weak points to your tool? And I'll ask honestly, like, where does this tool not perform well? And if someone says that there is no place they can think of, I don't believe them.
Yeah.
Everything has its flaw, everything has its weak spot. It's okay. I just want to know, have we addressed it?
Mhm. Are there any differences or anomalies right now in the market that vendors can take advantage of to stand out?
Um, so once again, I think integrations. One of the things we have all these alerts coming in, all these indicators coming in. How do they feed one platform? Big Panda's kind of almost there, which is that event correlation. You have six or seven nondescript things happen in your environment. How do you correlate them to actually equal one event? And so I think if you look at that, that's what we're really missing right now is we have everything firing alerts, but we have nothing actually putting those alerts together to tell us a story.
Mhm.
And it becomes almost alert fatigue, and it also becomes very distracting. Event correlation is big right now in our world. I think that's where we're lacking a lot of space.
Mhm. Where do you spend most of your time, you know, currently right now? Not just when you're kinda, like, researching a product, but in general as a practitioner. Most is digital now. We're not fully face to face yet.
Oh, I mean, everyone spends their entire day in Reddit, right? I mean, there's so much you can get in Reddit. No, I'm looking through Twitter. I'm reading articles and blogs. I have a pretty good threat intel feed I built personally for me to look through, and I'm looking through products that are being used. I'm looking through vendors that are producing intel for me. I'm looking at where the market's going, and to be honest, sometimes I'm looking at where people in those companies are moving from. So I'll say, "Oh, someone just moved to Chronicle? Okay, well, that sim must be up and coming because that's someone I vouch for." Um, uh, Chris Roberts, I think, just moved to a company. I don't know which
Yep.
company it might be.
Boom
You
boom
know,
supersonic.
yep,
As
carries a little weight, right? John Strand in Black Hills, same thing. Black Hills. If when you're looking at who the people are working with, and there's a little more street cred involved.
Mhm. Who is influencing you right now, in the market? You mentioned Chris and
Um, well, I'll read Chris. I read a lot from John Strand is another one. Jeremiah Grossman is
Mhm.
another one. I take a lot of vetting in. Um, Jen Easterling just went to CISA. I read a lot of her stuff. Very good stuff. Um, I try to get a lot of the influence. Read around. I want to know a lot more. I will tell you that I take Chris Roberts' opinion very honestly because he is brutally honest, like I feel I am. And he'll call a spade, and he'll say what it is, whether it's good or bad, whether it's his own performance or something else. And that's what I want. I don't need 100% all the good things. I want to know the truth.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with that.
Mhm. I do wanna have a little bit of fun now, and so
Mhm.
this is where I'm curating a wonderful long list called the shit list.
Hmm.
And I want to know, what is the worst thing you've experienced from a vendor?
Whew. Oh, worst thing. I had a bar that worked for me directly. They provided me people and software and hardware. They proposed a new best in breed tool. I said I couldn't define the business case. I needed a tool. I couldn't define the problem. I needed a tool, and I really was so short staffed. I couldn't maintain or bring another tool on. So I told them it wasn't the right time. I appreciate it, but thanks. They proceeded to go to my boss and convince him he needed this tool, to the point where um, he called me and asking me for numbers. How many endpoints do we have? How many servers do we have? How many VPCs are we in? And I realized when through his asking, what he was doing was he's asking me so he could buy this tool. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, so and so says we need this tool. It's a great tool, and I'm looking into getting it. I'm like, no, I don't want the tool. I can't use the tool. It will be no need. And I said, I told them no. And so I immediately called the vendor up and I said, what are you doing? Well, we thought that, maybe you were just too in the weeds and you couldn't see the bigger picture. So we decided to ask your director what he thought. Well, I'm sorry. I called the director back and I just said, no, I don't want this tool and I refuse to take it. And, if you're going to take the MSSP's view over mine, he's like, absolutely not. It probably killed my relationship with that vendor because I haven't done business with a vendor since, and nor have I received a real fun cold call from them that we all love. So I'm pretty sure I'm on that vendor shit list. But yeah, it's fine with me. I never have to deal with that vendor, and I never have to deal with vendors going behind my back.
In your opinion, what would be the alternative approach?
Um, so the relationship of vendors is vital, and I think this is where the vendors miss it. I can't go brief the board that the reason I bought the product is because I had a great lunch, whiskey, and cigars. I know that the vendors love to do that, and I mean we as in we love it, but that's not the reason I'm gonna buy your tool. It's a relationship. You're supplying a tool that fixes a problem for me. I'm buying your tool, which as a salesperson is helping you meet your quota. And this relationship will only work if the tool works for me and I continue to need the tool. So you need to take a look at my business and see what does your business need? How can I help you? How can I apply this tool to your business? And how can we support this tool? I Some of my worst relationship with vendors have been they sold me a tool and don't call me back until the end of each quarter when they want to sell me more of their tool. Not asking me, how are you doing? What's going on with our tool? But do you want more? Um, I have a big vendor now that has sold me a ton of stuff. And every time I say, hey, I don't think your tool's working the way it thinks it is, they're like, well, you should buy this module. And I'm like, well, but what I own is not working. Why would I continue to buy something from you? And it's those hard conversations that you have
Yeah.
to have.
Let's flip it on its head. What's
Yeah.
one thing a vendor has done that made you feel good? What worked for you?
So I've had vendors, come in, roll up their sleeves and work with me in the middle of an outage, sit down and say, we're going to be here till it's done. And the we is important. We're here till it's done. So I have a great relationship with a patching tool called BigFix. It's a patching automation tool. It's amazing. It's probably one of the best relationships I have where they've sat, rolled up their sleeves. I literally had an issue of coding. They got me a hold of the CTO. He was at the airport and he literally fixed our code while waiting for a plane. This is a CTO of a company who called us and fixed it, said, all right, put this in. Okay, okay, that's great. That's dedication. I wouldn't expect that. I would never expect that for any company, but that showed me they cared about me.
I mean, this is super insightful. I want to know though, just in
Mhm.
general, what do you hate most about the cybersecurity industry?
Well, I mean, the vendor relationships are toxic. The cold calls, the random emails, hey, I know you didn't read my email, so I'm gonna send you another one. Hey, if it's 7 emails down, get the hint. Because what I've also learned, like, if I reply to an email saying not interested, you just continue to persist. And vendor, that's not gonna work. Ooh, this is the worst I had. I had a vendor stand up a typo squatting site of my company's website. And then 2 days later email me and say, look what we detected. How come you didn't detect this site? It's totally a typo squatting social phishing site. I had my Intel team look at it because we had gotten word of it the day before, and it was literally stood up by that vendor, who then, when I didn't respond because I was so angry, proceeded to email everyone in my above me about how they had found the site and how they can help us fix our social phishing. That was horrible. That was just the worst way to ever engage me. Engage me with, look what I found on the web about your company, like you're doing something philanthropic. Great. But then making me call you to tell me what you found. I know
Yeah.
the deal. I know what you're doing.
Yeah. That's pretty bad. I don't know. I think that one is the winner.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the worst ways to engage me. If I could have found the person, I'd probably put hands on them, just because
Yeah.
the amount of work it caused. But yeah.
Damn. All right. So, we just breezed
Mhm.
through this.
Mhm.
This is awesome. What's kind of one thing you want to impart on the audience today?
What, like I tell every vendor, I'm open when I get into a relationship with vendors. And I call it a relationship because that's what it is. I'm going to buy your product. That means I'm putting my professional reputation at risk by bringing your product in my environment. But until you're vested to my use of your tool. So if you sell me a tool and I don't leverage it right, you think I'm going to blame my lack of skills? I'm going to tell my boss your tool is horrible. It may not be. It could be the greatest tool in the world. It's just I'm not going to take that on my back. But vice versa, if you're not ensuring I'm using your tool, I can guarantee you I will not buy your tool again. So it's a relationship. It is inherent to the person for me to have a successful engagement pre and I stress this, and post sale. I've had some great pre-sales experiences that have turned into ghosting. You know,
Hmm.
it's like, hey, I'm still here. What are you going to do? Um, so I think for me, it's a relationship and it's ongoing. It is not transactional. It's not call me at the end of each quarter to tell me a new incentive you have. Call me monthly. Call me weekly. With the company Big Fix, we used to have monthly visits by the sales rep, and there was a sales rep team which was with a post sales engineer. So I kind of flipped it, said I would like to see the sales engineer once a month, and then I could see the sales rep once a quarter. And then, that's the type of relationship. Have me embrace your tool. Have me think I can't live without it. Learn my business. Learn the intricacies of what I do, how I do it. Where, I got on the phone with admin that we were given. It was admin time from a SIM provider,
Hmm.
and they were dedicated to us. So we had a problem. We got on the phone with them, and their first question is, "Well, are you on cloud or prem?" Well, if you're my admin who's dedicated to me, wouldn't you know that? Like that tells me you know nothing about my business. At that point, I just tuned it out. Said, I don't trust this person with my environment. So learn who I am, learn what my team does, learn the business, and figure out how tools can approach problems in my business. And it's a great relationship. There's no doubt, and there's no doubt that there's loyalty both to the product. And to be honest, let's be honest, if I have a great relationship with a sales rep or a TAM and they go to another product, I'm going to reach out to them later and say, well, what are you selling? What's there? It's a small marketplace of people. We all pretty much know each other and circle around each other as we move from company to company. So I think it behooves the individual salespeople, the companies themselves, to support us. Because I do get those calls. What do you think of this product? Have you used it? And I'm brutally honest. I'll tell them the good and the bad. Um, I think the vendors have to treat it like a relationship. The groups are aging, right? So, going out for cigar and golf, which I don't know how to golf and I don't drink, I don't have a taste for whiskey. Um, I think the marketers need to change their game. I mean, it's getting
Okay.
the group of people are buying are getting younger. They're not doing it. Not that I'm young, but I just don't know how to golf and I only like beer. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's so. What would float your boat? What do you want to do?
I don't mind lunch. I don't mind dinner. If you take me to five-star steakhouse, I feel like I'm being more wined and dined than like having a talk, you know?
Yeah.
Like you don't take your first date out to a five-star restaurant, right? You want to find out if that date's worth even seeing for the second date. Um, you know, that's just honesty for me. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not the typical client. I'm easy going. Um, so those are the things. And I don't, and so and my whole thing is, yeah, let's talk about the product, but I'm not going to have lunch with you for an hour to talk about 100% cybersecurity. I do that. I cyber too much already. So for me, some of the best engagement I have with vendors are having a burger or a taco somewhere,
Mm.
having a beer somewhere, and just saying, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on in your space?" And then proceeding to talk about whatever else comes up.
Where can people find you these days?
You know what? I'll put it this way: do my own personal safety. I use my only social media is LinkedIn because I don't feel
There
I
you
should
go.
have the ability to comment on other people because I have a pretty sardonic wit. Uh, so I try to keep my professionalism. LinkedIn is where you can reach me. Um, all the people that want my SoFi email address have it. The people who I don't want to have it. I'm sure they all can find it through a sales track. Um, but the biggest thing is be prepared to go on an engagement with me, because that's the thing, it's with. I'm big on that. We're gonna do this thing together. That's what I always
Mhm.
tell any vendor that comes on board. We're gonna do it together.
Yeah, I love that. That's something that hasn't been fully fully discussed on this podcast so far. What really resonates with me is it's not just about the pre-sale, it's the post-sale. It's the whole journey. It's taking me, being there with me, hand in hand throughout the whole process. So that really resonates with me for sure.
Yeah, it is. It has to be because that's how we continue the engagement, right? Because
Mhm.
there's a point, no matter what you sell me, I might reach capacity. I'm saturated. I may not be able to buy any more licenses. Or so now what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna go from here? Is it another product? Is it a further engagement? But I think that's big because it turns into a bigger investment in time. And it really helps that because it is. It's cyclic. We're going to come around, and I think I've worked with vendors through and through their tools, and then I've left, gone to other tools, and said, I really like that experience better. I just came off of a POC where I had to tell one product, like, your product is great, but the support's horrible. It's not the price, it's not the product, it's that post sale support I don't trust, and I'm not going to buy it, even though you might be industry leading. My experience with your support is horrible. So that's what they lost on. I had another product where we lost it on um, price. And what I mean by price is we did an apples comparison of product. And we said we wanted 20,000 units of each. One product came in $70,000 lower than the other. Um, it it was shocking because I honestly thought the prices would be the other way around with these two competitors. But then I had one of the people from that the losing bid contact me and say, "Was it just price?" Well, I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's what it came out of." "Well, we can give you a better price." "Yes, but why didn't you give it to me in the first place? Why do I have to come back and negotiate?" None of us like to buy cars. I don't want to sit and go through 5 or 6 rounds of negotiation. I would
Mhm.
love the first bid to be within 80% of the price mark where we're gonna be. But if you're gonna try and short me in the beginning, then I'm just gonna walk away. I don't have time to negotiate price. Um, and so I'm pretty upfront. This is how much I have to spend. What do we get for it?
Mhm.
But if you're gonna try and short me or stiff me on the price, then I'm just not gonna buy your product.
Mhm.
And I think that's people understand no matter how good your product is, people are not just gonna buy it without really looking at the cost because there's so many competitors. I have a question you can include in the podcast if you want.
Yeah.
Has a cold call ever worked?
I will say yes.
Okay.
Have they turned into business? Is the next
Yeah.
question.
Okay. 'Cause I just they still continue, and I never quite understand why. Because I can't ever think of a time in a person's day where they just pick the phone up like, "You've called me at the exact moment I'm looking for an EDR tool. Let's go."
Yeah.
You know?
No, that the chances of
Yeah.
that are low, at least in my experience, and I
Yeah.
think if anything, it stems back to I think the chances of potentially turning that call into a transaction is if you build an authentic relationship with that
Yeah.
person and don't expect immediate results from that
Yeah.
relationship. It's long term. And
I agree. I
so
think I think that's the whole part, right? Learning that person before you even pitch them a sale is like,
exactly.
um, but don't get me wrong, on the other end, the very first sale I made from a hardware provider, years ago, I needed something, I reached out, I called him, I bought it. He's moved on to 3 different companies, but he still calls me because he says I was the first customer he's ever had. So he doesn't call me to sell me anything, he just calls to say, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing?" You know, and I realized that it made a mark on his life that I bought from him, but I think in the end of the day, I think that's the term of relationship, right? Because he's calling me, I'm like, hey, I'm not in the infrastructure business anymore. That's all right. I just want to see how you're doing. All right, then that's not a transactional relationship. I can deal with that,
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot better. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, this has been absolutely wonderful and insightful. I appreciate you coming on, and you're always invited back to the show.
All right. Thank you.
Ve-
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.